Hi, I'm Stephen Budden. I grew up as a depressed kid because I was intelligent and perceptive and intuitive, and this, I reasoned, meant I had to be depressed. So I would just be moping around, like idolizing the depressive sort of Kurt Cobain and Van Gogh and the artists that were mired in suffering. And eventually I realized that I was just butting up against something that wasn't effective as a life strategy. So I decided to alter my life. And it went through a lot of iterations of suffering, like you, relationships, terrible, think you're out and it's more terrible, think you found someone else and it's terrible again. So I call these things relationship patterns, and they're the patterns of interaction based on the games that give us the result we think we deserve with our lives. So I chose to become very good at a few things like art and music and songwriting and writing, creative arts. And that boosted my confidence and kind of was like a bridge over these troubled waters. So that helped me get through a lot of trials and tribulations and suffering. And I'm very grateful for that. It was only much later that I realized, I need to work on how I relate to people, how I communicate outside of writing and poetry, how I convince, how I persuade. So I started to do that more and more. And the result is that now I have a family and I can watch my inner thoughts as I start to go into the pattern, so I am free of those. There are still some that I indulge in because humans like to learn things the hard way, so I'll just be like, I'm going into this pattern, okay. It feels good to go into this pattern, even though it's a miserable thing and I have to apologize a few minutes later. However, being free of the patterns generally, it feels so good and beautiful, and life is full of purpose. And what I liked about this process, I started it when I was at a call center in a relationship with an alcoholic woman, and I worked the night shift for minimum wage, and everything was as bad as it could be, right? You know the feeling, like every paycheck would just go toward dad, maybe like a little dinner, and then back in the cycle again, working to get paid to get out of the zero ground. And this all gradually began to change, and hundreds of hours were spent in that night shift because there were no calls. So I listened to everything I could find that was free. And I didn't know about podcasts if they existed. And I listened to like Tony Robbins things that I got from torrents or wherever I could find them. And literally everything I could find, from like psychology, Milton Erickson, NLP, past life therapies, timeline therapies, financial money mastery, repatterning, think and grow rich type things, manifestation techniques, everything. And most of it was all like a world was open, because I was like, I thought if you were smart, you had to be miserable. I thought if you were intelligent. So a lot of the clients I work with are intelligent people that have convinced themselves that they need to be miserable because they can see what's going on in the world. They can see through the veil, whereas most people can't. And I want to share with you that you can be highly intelligent and find the points of leverage in your life and be happy. There are many people doing that as well. It's just the meaning we hang on certain things. And if you decide that life is about the meaning you create and the things you create and the contributions you make, then you will be happy. And so I help people do just that through a holistic process, I would say. What I came to realize was that I've been using my body wrongly, nourishing it poorly. I wrote a book on dietary healing strategies, standing in posture with imbalanced centers that kept me in my head, thinking in thought loops without knowing how to get out, choosing people based on their wound rather than their features and qualities, all kinds of patterns, launching into parental patterns or child patterns at a heartbeat. So I spent 5 years of meditation and then had an awakening experience on a beach, which is very hard to describe, but it helped me usher me up to the next level. And when I was at the next level, I could see above things, but I was still kind of living in the crap pattern. And you may have experienced this as well. When you're done with the pattern, you're still in it, and you're like, what is happening? There's this lag time. I'm done with this. Why am I still here? So then Compassionate Universe came and broke my neck, slammed me into the ocean floor while I was in a bodyboarding. And that woke me up again. So 3 calls to awakening you will find, or at least I've found, and in the literature I've found that to be the case. So as we move through this evolutionary path, there are often these shocks. Now, there are also 7-year cycles in Jungian therapy, or the 7 stages of evolution, and the Gurdjieff work, the law of 7. And as you move toward the new octave, the new frequency, the new higher way of being, there are certain stages that take more effort, and these require what we call a shock. First, there's an unconscious shock, and then there's a conscious shock to get you past those parts of the frequency that are harder to leap. And I love these processes, and I love meeting people when they're in this disillusionment, phase 4 in the law of 7, because then you have the most leverage to make an alteration. When people are broken up and they're with someone, or their business fails, and they're like, oh, I need to do something different. Yes, you do. Because to create this life and this world we want to see, we need to be the people that occupy that world. That's how simple it is. And I was mired in digital addiction for many years, and that created a lot of suffering without me even knowing that that was a cause of suffering. I just felt like, oh, life kind of sucks, and you talk to people and they kind of drift away, because I wasn't putting my energy personally into nourishing these relationships in real time. And I met women online. They looked pretty good in pictures, and and then everything would hit the fan and blow up again. So the path is holistic that I use on myself and others, because you need to uproot some of these things that if everything erodes your standard of living and your quality of life a little bit, that's a huge erosion. It's almost like the opposite. You improve something 1% a day or a week, and you continually escalate your life until the end of the year. You're like a different person. That's what I will continually remind myself and bring myself back to. There's a way of standing where you're free of your patterns, and I want to show you that. That's called holistic postural analysis. You start with your feet, they're parallel, your hips are open, your knees are soft. And soft knees means you can roll with what comes. It's like a Tai Chi thing, Aikido and other branches. And it's very hard to learn soft knees, because people lock them and then I'll say soft, and then they'll bend them, and it's just this weird. If you can find the soft where it's no effort, your emotions might flow, because you've been locked up for too long. When you lock your knees, it locks your pelvis, it locks your back, it locks everything. When you find a way to soften them, I can feel it now. There's like this tingling energy that comes up through the body. So this is what I mean by it's holistic. A woman came to me to heal her relationship. I knelt down to touch her feet. Her relationship was able to heal and unfold as we released the pattern of having lost her parents that were in the feet. That's just one example. Another client, he very successful, fit, had everything it seemed, and I just lifted the chest like this much, and just all these tears poured out. I miss my mother, she passed away, and I never understood why until now. And what is it about this lifting of this 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch? Seriously. And you can see how I look like this. This is how I used to live. And now I live like this. I'm just present with the world. And it's not like you just do that, you crack your back and you're there. It's like you do that and you invite the rest of your consciousness into living in that new pattern. So knees soft, that softens the hips. You just find the places where standing is effortless and you're not holding on to anything. And you can ask yourself, what do I stand for? What do I stand for? And this standing and being aware of the body, as Joseph Campbell said, all of life's a meditation. We just mostly go through the meditation unconsciously. And same with standing and walking. I mean, when you're being either conscious or unconscious. So are you conscious of the way you're walking? And are you conscious of the way you're standing and lying and talking and sleeping and etc.? The answer is, in most cases, no. What brings the pinnacle of conscious awareness to a moment? Is it that flow state? I think you can invite it into any moment. It's just a question of changing the conversation. What's most important to you? Where do you tune out and move away from life? Where do you tune in and move toward life? That's exciting, that's beautiful, that's powerful. Just asking that one question. I like to ask myself, this is the most important affirmation ever. And it cost me tens of thousands of dollars to learn, and scars and wounds in my heart and body from broken bottles and craziness in relationship. And I first asked myself this while I was like, someone had gotten drunk and we were in Long Beach and we were down there, and she had taken off her shoes and she was chasing me for some reason, and I was running because she had some sort of weapon, which I think was a heel, and I was running like, and the police were behind us, and I was running trying to guide her toward our car or our hotel, which I forgot where it was. So it's like this impossible equation, and I started noticing the thoughts like, this is kind of funny, like I'm lighthearted right now, this is ridiculous. And then I said, this is the best moment of my life. And I started to ask myself, is that true? Is that true? And I realized that it actually was true when I said this is the best moment of my life. Because there's no way for the mind to push away anything. I couldn't make all these excuses. And when I said this is the best moment of my life, this full throb, rush of life, saw the stars, full awareness, running in this crazy situation, and it was beautiful. So now, at another time, I used to run many miles, and I was running by the sunset, and I realized that whenever I reached the peak state, I'd be like, okay, time to go home. Because I'd trained myself not to hit that high level, that pinnacle of joy. So you imagine how that manifests in like sexual encounters, etc. It does in everyone. Most people who engage in this work are able to meet sexually for the first time in their life. And I was running and the sun was setting, and I said, oh, I'm going to go home. What am I going to do at home? I'm going to go sit at home and like watch a screen, text someone that I think I'm missing, that it's just an addictive behavior. So instead I like turned around, I started running further. I said, this is the best moment of my life. And I trained myself to stay in that high longer, physiologically, psychologically. And now that high is higher than it's been. Not higher than it's been ever, because we ebb and flow. Higher than it's been collectively in my whole life. It's a beautiful time. So try it out. This is the best moment of my life. What happens? You're forced to acknowledge that this is your life now and there's nothing else. And then if something doesn't feel right, you're invited to alter it. But there's no like, you'll hear this is the best moment of my life, but I wish like she were different, or I were different, or this thing were different, or I had more money, no. That's all a trick. You bring all the present awareness to your body, to your experience, and then you can do any number of those things. Because most people are walking around half in the present, half in the past, or even 2/3 in the past and half in the present, because it's not logical. None of it works. Some in the future, when you come together with someone, like 75% of each of you has been in the past, most likely. At least that's how it has been for me. So welcome to the new world. This is such beautiful stuff that we get to access as humans now. And I was shown these beautiful things by a woman who passed away recently. And now I am called to share it more, because I realize, as she passed, there was this dead silence. I was like, oh man, I'm the one that trained with her the longest in a little school in San Francisco. I'm the one that better share this stuff. And there are people sharing facets of everything, and this is just a little bit different. And my conception of life is more holistic in general. Like when someone asks me a question, should it be this thing or this thing, Republican or Democrat? Like, I'll always be like, that's not that's not the right question. Like, how do you engage humans in society so that everyone can thrive and the environment can thrive? And people just oversimplify in dualities, and I've always been outside of that, because, as I said, I grew up as the artistic, or maybe I didn't say that, as the artistic archetype. And it was only later in life I got slammed into the healer archetype, though I had always carried that. So this is an invitation for you to start to realize where you're limiting, where you're programming, because we're all programmed in this silly system, so it's not our fault. It is our responsibility to learn and transcend that, and this is the responsibility you now have, because you're hearing this and you heard something like this in other places. And it's something about the holistic conception that I've always had since my mother healed herself of life-threatening disease when I was a kid, with this knowledge that's so beautiful and hasn't been available in these ways for humans forever. So welcome to the new world. You really are free now to create your life, so we can create this world we want to live in. pandemic, boom, traumas, things like that, usherance into the new, the new age. That law of seven. That was the one of the periods of disillusionment that needed this conscious shock to move forward. We are forward. We're not done with all problems. However, you are now fully invited to be yourself and to participate in the world in the ways that bring you joy and that bring the most leverage. Like, what are your gifts? How can we embrace them? Isn't that beautiful? Thank you so much. Subscribe if you feel inspired. I'll see you on the other side.